ADR. Promoting dialogue. It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Abuja. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Ghana's Finance Minister Dr. Fosun announces the scrapping of some major taxes during the 2025 National Budget presentation.
We have programmed the following nuisance taxes for removal in line with our manifesto promise. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 10% withholding tax on winning from lottery, otherwise known as the betting tax.
Senegal's National Assembly examines prisoner transfer agreement with Morocco. Liberia's outgoing Chief Justice gives an appraiser of the state of the rule of law in her final address. And Niger's military leader, General Chiani, receives recommendations from National Conference on New Direction for the country.
Everything we do must align with the defense and preservation of the interests of Niger. This Niger, which we have a duty to defend, even at the cost of our lives.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and welcome to our listeners within the sub-region and beyond. We begin in Ghana, where the Minister of Finance, Dr. Kasil Ato-Fason, has announced that some major taxes will be abolished. This is in fulfillment of a campaign promises made by President John Mahama ahead of the December 2024 election. The taxes, which includes a controversial electronic transfers levy, also called e-levy, and a COVID levy, were regarded by many financial experts as having outlived their relevance. He made this known during the presentation of the 2025 National Budget Statement and Economic Policy of Ghana. The presentation is in line with Article 179 of the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. From Accra, Echiatisu completes this report.
The budget, called the Asempa or Good News Budget, addressed major tax exemption expectations of many citizens, particularly the e-levy, the COVID levy, and a 10% withholding tax on winnings from lotteries, better known as betting tax. Addressing the Parliament of Ghana on Tuesday, Dr. Ato-Fason stated that the taxes, which have placed huge burdens on the populace, will no longer exist after the budget is approved.
We have programmed the following nuisance taxes for removal in line with our manifesto promise. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 10% withholding tax on winning from lottery, otherwise known as the betting tax. We will abolish the electronic transfer levy, e-levy, of 1%. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 10% withholding tax on betting. We will abolish the electronic transfer levy, e-levy of 1%. We will abolish the emission levy, otherwise as in Wustie tax. We will abolish the VAT on motor vehicle insurance policy. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 1.5% withholding tax on unprocessed gold by small-scale miners.
The minister also announced the uncapping of the Get Fund, a public trust that provides financial support for education in Ghana.
This year, the budget for free senior secondary school education program is 3.5 billion Ghana cedis. By uncapping the Get Fund, we will be making available an additional 4.1 billion Ghana cedis, specifically for financing free secondary education program and other related expenditures.
Dr. Fosun also announced the reintroduction of road tolls, which was controversially cancelled across the country in November 2021 under the erstwhile Nana Akufo-Addo government.
Accordingly, government will work with the stakeholders, including the private sector, to roll out a technology-driven solution to reintroduce road tolls this year as part of the big push.
The budget presentation is in line with Article 179 of the 1992 Constitution of Ghana and Section 21 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016 Act 921.
Etiatu fight that report. Meanwhile, Ghana's President John Mahama has completed a working visit to Ouagadougou. The visit focused on economic and security cooperation. This is his last visit to the three Sahelian states that he has done in the last week since taking over as President of Ghana. In their encounter in Ouagadougou, John Mahama and his Burkinabe counterpart, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, held a press conference marked by projects in the aviation and hydrocarbon sectors. The discussions focused on strengthening relations between Ghana and Burkina Faso with an emphasis on economic and security cooperation. The two leaders also discussed issues on energy. President Mahama addresses the press after a meeting in Burkina Faso. In Liberia, the legal community gathered at the Supreme Court on Monday to bid farewell to Chief Justice Siainen Yo as she delivered her final remarks at the opening of the March 2025 term of court. The Chief Justice is expected to retire in June this year upon reaching the age of 70 as enshrined in Liberia's 1986 constitution. During her remarks, Chief Justice Yo took the opportunity to reflect on her career, emphasizing the principles that have guided her journey and the vital role of the judiciary in upholding the rule of law. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Ibrahim Parker reports.
In her address, Chief Justice Yo emphasized the importance of impartiality within the judiciary, especially given the public and political scrutiny around the Supreme Court's decisions. She acknowledged the challenges the court faces, particularly in cases involving political figures, but reaffirmed that the judiciary must remain committed to its duty to interpret and uphold the law without being influenced by external pressures. Reflecting on her tenure, Chief Justice Yo highlighted the success of her administration in reducing the Supreme Court's case backlog. From March 2022 to March 2025, a total of 216 cases were resolved, demonstrating the court's decision to efficiency and accountability.
When I ascended to the position of Chief Justice, I made a pledge that would guide my leadership, rebranding the Liberian judiciary under the mantra, everyone do his or her work as the days of mourning are over.
During the ceremony, President Joseph Boakai expressed his appreciation for Chief Justice Yo's unwavering dedication to the nation and her leadership in promoting judiciary independence.
The background of our democracy is a strong and independent judiciary that dispenses justice without fear, favor, or delay. I call on you to remain steadfast in adhering to these principles for all who appear before you without discrimination.
As Chief Justice Yo prepares to step down, her legacy of integrity, commitment to justice, and pursuit of judiciary excellence, even in the face of challenges, will have a lasting impact on Liberia's legal landscape. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Abraham Parker in Monrovia.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now here in Senegal, the National Assembly this Tuesday, March 11, examined an important agreement concerning many Senegalese individuals detained in Morocco. This agreement, known as the Convention on Assistance to Detained Persons and the Transfer of Sentenced Persons, was signed in 2004 between Dakar and Rabat. Once adopted in plenary, this convention will mark a significant advancement in judicial cooperation between Morocco and Senegal, as well as improved support for Senegalese nationals incarcerated in Morocco. For several years, Morocco has served as a major transit point for sub-Saharan migrants attempting to reach Europe. Among these migrants, many Senegalese citizens find themselves in irregular situations and are arrested by Moroccan authorities. Statistics indicate that there are approximately 299 Senegalese prisoners in various Moroccan prisons with convictions primarily related to illegal immigration, drug offenses, fraud, and other crimes. Recognizing this situation, the Senegalese government is working to facilitate the transfer of its nationals back to Senegal, where they can serve their sentences in a more familiar environment, thereby aiding in their social reintegration. Let's turn our attention to the Gambia, as a group calling itself the Coalition of Progressive Gambians has announced a plan to protest against the Gambian government following the projection of rights for diaspora voting by Parliament. They described the rejection as unconstitutional and urged the Barrow-led government to comply with the rule of law and respect the Constitution. Sankule Janko tells us more in this report.
Coalition of Progressive Gambians, COPG, says it will mobilize the Gambians and protest against what it described as the unconstitutional rejection of the diaspora voting that disenfranchises them as Gambians. They argue that members of parliament prematurely rejected the registration rights of Gambians abroad during the second reading of the election bill, automatically seizing their rights to vote. The group says the action of the National Assembly does not reflect the aspirations of the Gambian people that they represent, adding that 1 in 3 compounds are supported financially by a family member in the diaspora. Meanwhile, the COPG has urged President Barrow and his government to respect the rule of law, in this case by adhering to the existing electoral laws. Diaspora Gambians are very pivotal to the socio-economic development of the Gambia. In 2024 alone, remittances sent by Gambians amounted to over $775 million, more than 31% of the gross domestic product, GDP, of the country.
Sankule Janko fight that report from Banjul. In Cote d'Ivoire, 8 months ahead of the 2025 presidential election, a group of 25 opposition political parties have called for the coalition of peaceful alternation in the country. Known as Cap Cote d'Ivoire Coalition, the parties include the PDCR of Tidjane Cham, the FPR of Afi N'Gesson, the COGEP of Charles Blegoudé, the MGC of Simon Gbagbo. The opposition coalition calls for a revision of the electoral register and the political dialogue before the elections are held. Simon Gbagbo, spokesperson for Cap Cote d'Ivoire Coalition, and Tidjane Cham, coordinator of the new opposition platform, made these statements.
It is essential to avoid procrastination, to organize unity of action, to uphold the integrity of our stance, to address challenges effectively, and to implement reforms. We must also articulate clear and distinct directions, that we aim for directions that are free, fair, transparent, and thoughtful. We must ensure that we do not succumb to indifference or the theory of racism, but instead strive for a life of reward and the strengthening of national memory. Let us remain focused on our national goals and act with deliberation. This date is historic, and I have worked tirelessly to ensure that the October 2025 elections are conducted in a transparent, inclusive, and peaceful manner for the greater benefit of Côte d'Ivoire.
Simone Gbagbo is the spokesperson for Cap Cote d'Ivoire Coalition, followed by Tidjane Cham, who is the coordinator of the coalition. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has activated its standby force to curb terrorism and other trans-border crimes in the sub-region. This was disclosed this Tuesday, March 11, during the 43rd Ordinary Meeting of ECOWAS Committee of Chiefs of Defense Staff in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. According to Nigeria's Minister of Defense, Mohammed Badaru, the economic growth of the region is dependent on stable peace. Christopher Aticho reports.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, during its 43rd Ordinary Meeting of Chiefs of Defense Staff in Abuja, announced that it had activated a standby force to combat terrorism in the region. with a focus on the Sahel, where terrorist groups have been increasingly active. The meeting also addressed critical security issues affecting West Africa, including the creation of an ecosystem to enhance regional stability. The 43rd Ordinary Meeting comes at a time when the Alliance of the Sahelian States AES, comprising Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, announced plans to deploy a 5,000-strong force to tackle insecurity in the region. Additionally, Niger Republic has threatened to pull out of the multi-tasked National Joint Task Force aimed at combating Boko Haram and its affiliates in the Sahel. General Christopher Musa, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, emphasized the need for participating states to collaborate, share resources and exchange intelligence to address the complex security challenges in the region. The Sahel has accounted for 51% of terrorist activities in 2024. Already, the three Sahelian countries have teamed up to form a separate confederation called the Alliance of the Sahel State AES.
Christopher, teacher, with that report. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Ghana's Finance Minister Dr. Forson announces the scrapping of some major taxes during 2025 national budget presentation. Liberia's outgoing Chief Justice gives an appraisal of the state of the rule of law in her final address. Senegal's National Assembly examines personal transfer agreement with Morocco. Still ahead in the news, Niger's military leader, General Chiani, receives recommendation from National Conference on new direction for the country. We also have a guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for being there with us. Let's travel to the Sahel region now, particularly Niger, where the head of the military in power, General Abdurrahman Chiani, received the final report of the recommendations of the National Conference. The national consultation held in Niger last February brought together the country's vital forces and proposed recommendations for the country's new direction. General Abdurrahman Chiani called for unity to meet the challenges of Niger's development. Mohamed Toumba is Minister of the Interior and Chairman of the Commission. He presented the document to General Chiani, while General Chiani commended the Commission and conference delegates for the outcome of the national discussion.
If it was possible to achieve this in 5 days of work and less than 3 weeks of compiling documents, analyzing contributions from citizens of all backgrounds, and drafting the report, if all this was possible with a successful outcome leading to today's ceremony for the presentation of the final report of the national consultations, it is because somewhere dedicated men and women, along with a plenary and subcommittee, invested their hearts and souls, giving their best for the salvation of our nation, our beloved Niger. Keeping in mind that this is no longer the time for rancor, division, or sterile adversity, everything we do must align with the defense and preservation of the interests of Niger. This Niger, which we have a duty to defend, even at the cost of our lives. No country can develop amidst division. No country can develop through clan rivalries. No country can develop without cohesion and the constructive spirit of all its people.
You just heard Niger's Minister of the Interior, General Mohamed Toumba, followed by the military leader of the country, General Abdurrahman Chiani. Still in the Sahel region, dozens of Malian nationals have been expelled to their country's border for several days. According to the Mauritanian authorities, these people are in an irregular situation on its territory. As tensions rise on the border between the two countries, Malian authorities are trying to clarify the situation of these people. Imo Edit reports.
Among the many irregular migrants expelled from Mauritania, many are Malians. They were taken to the border between Mauritania and their country of origin. In the Malian town of Gogi, on the border with Mauritania, expelled Malian migrants blocked the border post to prevent Mauritanians from entering Malian territory. Faced with a tense situation over the past few days, the Malian authorities are trying to calm things down. Musa Ag Atta is the Minister of Malians abroad.
Since March 2nd, we have witnessed a significant influx of Malian nationals arriving from Mauritania at the Goki border post. This mission has arrived at Goki and financial and material support has also been provided. A system has been put in place to ensure that any additional arrivals can benefit from comprehensive assistance.
While the situation is provoking strong reactions among Malian public opinion, the authorities have spoken out to clarify things so as not to leave room for misinformation. Again, Musa Ag Atta, Minister of Malians Abroad, speaks.
There is no targeted campaign against Malian nationals in Mauritania. There is an ongoing migration policy in Mauritania that applies to all foreigners residing in the country.
For several months, Mauritania has begun a campaign to expel foreign nationals in an irregular situation as part of its policy against illegal migration.
Imo Edit with the details of Aliyu Cham's report from Bamako. In Benin, defendants in the case which involved the assassination of former Finance Ministry Executive Pierre Oban Danivo in 2010 appeared in court this Tuesday. In the dock was Kojo Kosi Alofa, who is the alleged perpetrator of the assassination of Oban, and Donitien Amusu, his alleged accomplice. Meanwhile, the trial of activist Steve Amusu in Benin has been postponed to April 7, appearing before the court for the repression of economic offenses and terrorism. On Monday, the debates was briefed but very tense. Here is a report from our correspondent in Cotonou, Aziz Adam Sule, and voiced by Abdullahi Hassan.
Returning to the stand for the second time, activist Steve Amosu witnessed a heated debate between his lawyers and the prosecution. The defense strongly contested the intervention of the special prosecutor regarding the nature of Steve Amosu's contributions to the webpage Frere Humvi. This account, hosted on social media, is highly critical of the Beninese government. When questioned, Steve Amosu, dressed in his prison uniform, reaffirmed that he was not behind the Frere Humvi page. The prosecution countered that at the beginning of his interrogation, Steve Amosu had admitted to being Frere Humvi. They questioned this change in his stance. The debate also focused on the objectives of the Frere Humvi webpage, which critiques the regime of Beninese President Patrice Talon. Steve Amosu described it as a platform for sharing socio-political reflections. After a period of intense and tense discussions, the hearing was adjourned and rescheduled for April 7th. Steve Amosu was returned to prison. Having been imprisoned since August 2024, activist Steve Amosu is facing charges including the initiation and dissemination of false news through social media and direct incitement to rebellion.
Aziz Adam Sule's report from Benin, voiced by Abdullahi Hassan.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview takes us back to Ghana as the finance minister presented the 2025 budget to the nation today. The budget, which outlines bold policy measures, also aims at stabilizing the country's economy, fostering growth, and addressing the nation's fiscal challenges. Our guest is senior finance lecturer at the University of Cape Coast Business School, Dr. Seriam Kawor. He shares with WADR expectations of the budget and how it should anchor the country's debt situation.
The finance minister to factor into the budget the recommendations from the National Economic Dialogue, which made some profound recommendations for government to look at. I expect that they revitalize the account that is supposed to take charge of debt management. That's the sinking fund account. And I also expect that the taxes that they promise to reduce in terms of the e-levy, betting tax, emission levy, they take those things off. That is what I'm expecting from them. I also heard him talk about trying to make sure that they give enough funds to the agricultural sector to ensure that they pump more money into whatever they are looking at.
These taxes are sources of revenue generation to the country. And so if they are scrapped, what would be the alternative source of revenue generation to continue government business?
As you said, these are revenue. And in budgeting, we have revenue and then we have the expenditure. The finance minister made us aware that they are going to cut down on government expenditure. And so if they're going to cut down on government expenditure, there should be a percentage of cut that will cover for these taxes. We also looked at the e-levy when it was passed at the time. They actually put away the road tolls. The previous administration realized their mistake and they have promised that they are going to bring back the road toll. This current government has also made a firm determination that they will bring back the road tolls. So I'm expecting that if the road tolls comes in, that will also bring some amount of money. The government talks about rationalization of taxation in the country. There are a number of taxes, especially at the port of entry, that do not find their way into the consolidated fund of the country. And so they're trying to bring those ones in.
How do you expect the budget to anchor the country's debt situation?
We all know about the debt situation and the debt restructuring that has taken place. The memorandum of understanding between the external creditors and the government of Ghana. I am just hoping that government will follow suit on that particular one. As I have said earlier on, I'm expecting that the sinking fund will come to fruition, where monies and revenues collected in the country, a percentage goes into the sinking fund account, where they will be able to use these funds to invest them, and so that when the debts fall due, they can use it to pay this amount of money over time. And the debt situation, to make it sustainable, there are some state-owned enterprises and joint venture companies in Ghana that have been operating and they are not profitable. I am expecting the finance minister to give a directive on the way the entities will be restructured and refinanced using the public-private partnership model.
That was Dr. Serim Kawa. He is a senior finance lecturer at the University of Cape Coast Business School in Ghana. Now, in the world of sports, the Confederation of African Football CAF President Dr. Patrice Mustifi and African Club Association Chairman Hessi said signed a historic memorandum of understanding in Cairo, Egypt on today, Tuesday. The MOU strengthens the partnership between CAF and the ACA and formalizes a number of strategic objectives. ACA has commended CAF President for increasing financial support for club football, and this includes $50,000 subsidiary fees given to all clubs that participated in the preliminary stages of the CAF Interclub competition. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maudo Diouf, Mam Kodufai and Umun Danyoko for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Cully. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3.